Hello, everyone. This is Jamie Henkel. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm the Learning and Inclusion Manager at PFLAG National. Thank you so much for joining us for something to talk about live today. I know that it has been a stressful week, and so without no further ado, I'm going to bring in Jean Marie Navetta, who's going to lead our conversation today.
Hey, Henkel, how are you?
I'm a little bit stressed out, and it is very gray and rainy, which I know is super unexpected for Portland in the fall, but it is not helping the situation. So,
I'm going to ask, so what are you doing for self-care?
I made myself some peanut butter chocolate chip cookies. I went on a mini hike with a friend on Monday. So, a couple things, but I probably am not doing enough.
Well, we're going to try to figure out some ways to do things. So we will see you in a little while. And thank you so much, Jamie. And welcome everybody to Something to Talk About Live. My name is Jean Marie Navetta. I'm the Director of Learning and Inclusion at PFLAG National, and my pronouns are she, her, and ella. And today we are talking about self-care, which I need to be honest with everybody, I'm extraordinarily bad at doing. I was trying to come up with what my self-care plan was, and I'm not proud to say it prominently featured potato chips, which I'm pretty sure is not self-care. But anyway, we're going to be talking about self-care in terms of the election season. And this is the point at which I am supposed to remind everybody that PFLAG is a 501c3 organization. This means we do not endorse candidates or pick on political parties. We just talk issues. And today we are talking the issue of self-care during the election season, which has been really, really difficult. And in fact, it's been written about every place. So we have our article today. It was actually featured in the New York Times this past weekend. And you were seeing stuff everywhere. So if you are joining us to have the conversation, you can get today's article at straightforequality.org/discussion series and access the article and the questions we are going to use today. And the article is from girlboss.com, and it's 10 self-care ideas to help you get through these rough political times. And it's really good stuff. But to have the conversation, you know that I am never left unsupervised. And today is a really not unsupervised day for me. So I'm going to bring in my boss, PFLAG's Executive Director, Brian Bond.
Hi, Jean Marie. How are you? Hi, everybody. Brian Bond. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I hope you are staying calm and taking care of yourself. But I thought you were actually going to tell me today how to do better self-care, Jean Marie. I didn't know I was part of the discussion.
No. The only thing we have going for us, Brian, is stovetop stuffing and potato chips. That's really all the two of us have.
Exactly.
So I was really hoping that you could help me have the conversation because people are really super stressed out right now. And I think that it's affecting people in some pretty profound ways. And so, the article actually mentions that the term post-election stress disorder was coined in 2016 to refer to what people were going through after that particular election. So I want to ask you, Brian, what kind of effects have the political climate had on you, and what is your your well-being, and have you had a self-care plan around this season?
That's a good question. It's one of those do what I say, not what I do kind of things, unfortunately for me. I do want to do my own disclaimer up front. If they're listening, I want to apologize to Liz Owen and Laura McGinnis, our comms team, if I happen to say anything I should not be saying today, and apologize to our lawyers. Sorry.
I promise I'm keeping him in line, communications team.
All right, now the disclaimer's out of the way. First of all, I do want to thank everybody at PFLAG, all the PFLAGers everywhere, for the work they did, for using their voices, for being part of the PFLAG Votes 2020 project and taking this election very seriously. It was amazing, some of the things I saw around the country. And I'm really proud of PFLAGers using their voices, reaching out to their families, their networks, and engaging in this what truly has been or is still the most important election of our lifetime. So with that, I just want to thank everybody. And I, I'll say the obvious, as we're having this discussion around self-care, we just need to let the votes be counted. And I know it's hard to tell people to just take a breath. We'll get there. But it's really important that people take care of themselves during this time and let the process happen. And for people in states where it's happening right now, where the action is, to use their voices to say, let the votes count, let the public servants do their job that are counting votes, so that democracy actually really does work. And then on the bad part of the self-care, I guess I would say right off the bat, I don't know if other people have noticed, but I feel this phenomena of we're going to need a lot of finger care after this over. I tend to refresh the Associated Press every 5 minutes, and I'm not sure that my index finger is going to take it for another 48 hours. So please take care of your index finger as well, or whatever digit you're using to refresh, because I know you're all doing it. I know you are.
So, Brennan, I actually think that you brought up something interesting, talking about letting the votes be counted and paying attention to what's going on. Do you see staying informed as a part of self-care? Do you think that that actually is a strategy in this particular political climate?
I think staying alert is important, especially now. But it's a balance, right? It's a balance. It's not just a balance we're having to work through for the election. It's also a balance we're trying to work through with COVID. There's a lot of people at home and in place and or stressed about going outside. So self-care writ large is probably more important than ever. A little PFLAG love goes a long ways right now, and I'm in the all the chapters that are doing the PFLAG connects. It's just those kind of things right now, even if nothing's said, are so important for people to see each other's faces and know we care and know we're a community and to know we're together in this.
I agree. And I'm going to ask you a question we kind of didn't plan on, which is probably going to make the communications shop panic. But you've been engaged in political stuff for a long time. Do you feel like there's anything unique to where we are right now? Do you think that COVID has kind of made it super unique? Or do you think there's anything else that makes this a little bit unusual? Because I think, especially as I talk, and it pains me to say this, to younger people for whom this is maybe their second election or their first election, this feels very frightening. Having a little bit longer of a timeline, do you think that we've seen a level of sort of stress that has required conversations about self-care the way they are right now?
Mm-hmm. So there's again, I'm going to try to stay in my lane and in the lines here, but you opened the door a little bit. When we talked about this being the most important election of our lifetime, it's true. And there's a lot of anger out there right now around just seeing how close the vote is in this country. It means after this is over, there's a lot of work to be done, a lot of soul searching to be done. But you kind of got to heal yourself first before you can have those conversations with people. And candidly, you being a data nerd, said with love, we got to know where those conversations need to happen. So again, there's just so much on people right now, so many hopes, so many aspirations. One of the things I saw last night on Rachel Maddow, I know you kind of like Rachel, Malcolm Kenyatta, who is a representative in Pennsylvania, just young, brilliant, amazing. He obviously went in pretty deep into the politics of it and a pro-equality president winning. But what he did say, too, especially with people who are feeling the anger and the frustration of where this country is right now, for somebody so young, he's so brilliant. And he said, no one election is going to solve all of our problems. So if a pro-equality president does make it across the finish line, wording that carefully, we need to celebrate that piece first and then take a step back and take care of ourselves and then figure out how we're moving forward. President Obama always quoted Martin Luther King Jr., who paraphrased the Theodore Parker quote that the arc of the moral universe is long but bends towards justice. That implies that justice is automatically going to happen. Justice doesn't automatically happen. It takes work. And that's what we have to do. Every day we have to get back up and do the work we do, even as hard as it is. It doesn't mean, again, that we don't need to take a step back. and take care of ourselves before we're ready to do that. In the article, I'm looking at the article, there was a great quote by Angela Davis, and I'm just going to paraphrase it. It basically said, you kind of got to take care of yourself if you're going to get stuff across the finish line.
Yes.
And that's kind of where I think we're at right now.
Right. No, and it was perfect. It was perfect and totally compliant with 501c3 rules.
Right.
So we still have our jobs. Yay. But I think that that's a really, really good point, that there's a lot going on here. There's a lot at stake here. And I think that that is causing a lot of stress for people. And I don't think everybody completely understands that. I know that I've had several conversations with people over the past couple of months that have sort of ended in well, it's just an election. It's all the same in the end. Everything's just going to go on. So that sort of gets me to my second question, which is, for people who don't take this concept of self-care seriously, how can we talk about this with people? I mean, I think part of the issue here is people don't always understand what is at stake. And that is why this is so much more stressful to certain communities. And, we're here talking about the LGBTQ community, although we could certainly talk about it, for example, with people of color, people with disabilities, lots of communities, let's just say that. So, Brian, if you had to make the argument to somebody as to why self-care is so absolutely critical and why we should be taking it seriously, what would you tell them? I mean, how would you kind of frame up what is at stake here?
So it's interesting. It's like taking it, and Jamie Hinkle and I were talking about this earlier. It's an interesting article, and it's really important to figure out how to talk to people about this. But at the same time, it really comes across as privilege when you try to tell somebody whose very lives are at stake to take care of yourself, and you take a breath, walk your dog, go outside. Do you have when there's so many things going on? So I think it's a really careful balance. But again, that's why I just kind of latched onto that Angela Davis quote and paraphrased it, just because it's not my place to tell anybody to do anything, and especially when their lives are at risk, and or if they're angry or they're scared. And we should all be a little bit scared about how the results are coming out, but there's 100 different reasons why some of it may come out, and we need to assess that and then figure out where we go from there. But I think at the end of the day, self-care is different for every individual. It's not necessarily the 10 things on this list, although there's probably a good hybrid of them that can help people with where they find that moment of peace and or internal care that just makes themselves feel a little bit better, a little bit more relaxed, and then get back up. But we have, I think articles like this have to be careful, or you cross that privilege line, and that's not what I can do or say. That's not right. It's up to the individual. But we can't encourage people that you can't get the stuff done you want to get done if you're not taking care of yourself.
It's true. And I think one of the other challenges that we have around this, and I'm just going to say I might be speaking from personal experience and maybe conversations you and I have had, which is this sense among people doing a lot of this work that I don't have time for this. It's not a priority right now. And actually a sense of guilt, even when you're trying to do any kind of self-care, and this, that I don't even deserve this. I just need to continue on the work. And I think there's been an evolution in us having conversations with each other inside of advocacy circles about how important this is, but it's definitely not an easy conversation, because I have to say, even for me, there's still, we don't have time for me to take care of myself going on in my head. There's a lot to get done, and so we have to get to work, and that serves nobody in the long run. So I want to get into sort of a third question, which is where we get into what we are doing. Because I'm looking at this, I'm looking at our comments, and I can't read all of them because I'm just not that coordinated. But I'm noticing people posting some things about what they have been doing for self-care. And I'm going to bring up Angela Davis, and I'm also going to bring up Audre Lorde, who is incredible. But Angela Davis said that self-care has to be incorporated into our efforts because it is, in fact, a part of activism. And Audre Lorde called self-care an act of political warfare. And a lot of people don't know, when we are talking about self-care, she was one of the first activists to really write about it as a political act, and she's not given the credit that she should be given for that, and we need to restore that into the conversation. I'll put my soapbox aside for now. So I want to ask you the question, Brian, what has self-care looked like for you, and have you been able to participate it in the extent necessary?
Other than my finger wearing it out, checking the Associated Press, which this will be a 30-minute period where I do not check it, which is just, I mean, I think my story. I'm a little over 13 years sober, and it's been a challenging time for me. I have not once thought of taking a drink, but I have replaced that with food. And like for me, and I know in the scheme of things, that is petty, right? That is, of course, that's my guilt, right? Playing into, here that, I'm worried about having maybe an extra couple of thousand calories versus whatever when the world kind of looks like it's falling apart and or there are people with issues. So I think honestly, my one true self-care for me would be, one, going to the gym when I can to deal with all those calories, but more importantly, my dog. He hasn't even put on costumes lately. I just hold him. He is so sick of the news. I think he's even ready for costumes again. But I think it's just different for everybody. It's just needing to, and part of, honestly, the self-care I get is the comments and things I see from PFLAGers and what they're doing either, and I'm not even looking at the chat today, right? But seeing how PFLAGers have engaged in this process, how PFLAGers have tackled COVID, and how PFLAGers have shared with each other things that they're doing. I will say, I think we can't miss the fact that, by the grace of God, hopefully we'll have an answer to all this by Friday afternoon. But that's not, our challenges aren't over then, right? We're getting ready to go into a holiday season. That is going to be really harder for people than ever, because probably the lack of travel for most people for safety purposes. So I think it's really important. And the fox is still in the chicken's coop for what happens, and there's a lame duck session. So there's going to be a lot put on people, a lot. And I think it's really important that people, like we figured out a vote plan. If they haven't been taking, like you freely admitted you don't take care of yourself the way you should. I can name other staff and PFLAGers I've talked to who don't. It's going to be really important to have a plan through the end of the year, because it's going to be a long winter, and that's just through the end of the year. You owe it to yourself, your family, your friends. You're just a better person, to Angela Davis's point, when you build that into yourself.
I agree. I totally agree with you. And I feel like this particular election season has been so brutal. And I do think that COVID definitely is putting a layer of anxiety on top of it. But I think that it has made people more aware of self-care. I know that I have had more friends checking in on me and me checking in on other people. And I think some of it just means so much because we're actually holding each other accountable to take care of ourselves. We joke about it, but a lot of people don't know on Thursdays, we have a lot going on because of this show and training and stuff. And Jamie Henkel, who is hosting today, will always IM me at a certain point to check in to see if I ate today. And it seems like such a minor thing, but some days it gets so busy that I actually need someone to remind me. And these sort of shared self-care responsibilities are really important. But I also feel like some of it has come down to creating boundaries. I give myself an hour in the morning to do exercise, whatever it is, some kind of cardio. It is a sacred hour, and I do not let anybody interrupt that hour. And it took me a long time to get to the point of kind of being selfish about my 1 hour in the morning at 5 o'clock. And it is probably one of the smartest things that I ever did. But I still feel a little guilty, Brian. Like I'm like, oh, I could be using this hour to do my email.
Well, I mean, again, some people don't have that opportunity, and you should not feel guilty for it. You should do it. You absolutely should. But it's important for people just to figure out what can it look like, to just be able to decompress or or take a step back. And it's going to be different for every person. And some people don't have that opportunity, but they need to, and it's easy again for me to say you need to try, but for your own self and your family and your friends, you need to do it. I will say, by the way, that you brought up the phone calls. I have noticed I now just randomly pick up the phone and call people that I haven't called. I've only texted with, unless it's been a conference call for the last year or 2 years, just randomly calling them, not even setting up an appointment. Hi, can I call you tomorrow at 10 a.m. I'm free between 10 and 12. No, this morning I got here early. It was election related. It's just fun stuff like finding out what's going on. I just randomly called 3 people. I felt so good. It had nothing to do with the conversation. It was that just connecting with another human being and somebody I hadn't talked to in a while. And we both would laugh about, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're talking on the phone. Who does that anymore?
I think it really means a lot. I have to tell you, yesterday, coming off of election day, I was really anxious and I felt like I couldn't function. And I was texting with a friend of mine who had checked in. And I said to him, I don't know how I'm going to do tomorrow. I have a lot going on. I'm teaching. I'm doing the show. I'm really stressed out about it. And he sent me a text that was so kind. He said, if you ever need a cheering section, call me and I will cheer for you. And then you can go do what you need to do. And I thought it was one of the nicest texts that I've ever gotten in my entire life. And it was such a simple thing. And yet that reaching out, I think, has become very much a self-care, even for the introverts among us. Mm-hmm. So I think let's bring back Jamie. There have been so many good comments. So let's see if Jamie can come back and share some of them with us and talk about it. Hey, Henkel, conversation is good today.
Yeah, lots of people needed to talk today. I think that's fantastic. That's exactly why we wanted to create this space. Now, one question that came up, and I'm not sure if I'll actually be able to pull it up on the screen and find it in all of these various comments, but somebody said that they were looking for something that was sort of LGBTQ specific to do that's sort of in this self-care space. Do you have any recommendations?
I do. I have one. I find, and this shows, and Brian's going to start teasing me because I'm such a nerd, but I find that when I'm feeling really stressed out and I'm so feeling hopeless, I dive into LGBT history, and there are so many good websites for it. I'll just sit at my laptop and I'll start Googling LGBT history and following the rabbit hole down things that I might be interested in. And I have to tell you, doing that has led me to find organizations working on history and culture that I've connected with and I support now, and it makes me really happy to do that. But it also gives me these stories of hope, these stories of, we've been here before. I'm not the first one who's felt this way. People have been really phenomenal about how they've dealt with it. And that is, I think, a really good way. And it's a great way to sort of honor our heritage. I also happen to think that just doing volunteering with an LGBT organization can be, the most basic volunteering. And it doesn't have to be big. Whatever talent you have, and everybody's got one, lending that talent to an organization. Like, are you good at finance? I bet you somebody needs help with their books. If you're good at designer, I guarantee someone needs a brochure. There's always something there. But I'm sure Brian has something less nerdy than my thing, which is studying.
No. I think that's, and to your point about reaching out to the community centers where they exist, or other allied groups, and say, do you need help? Again, we're going into the holiday season, and I know a lot of the PFLAG chapters do things, or in a normal time would be able to do things around the holidays to support families. So what does that look like? I'm going to be checking things out here in town for that. I will say, though, just to digress just how bad I am, I know you go into the nerdy history stuff. I go straight to the investigation discovery channel, the ID channel, and just zone out for hours. That's what I need to do to not know anything about the election and or bad stuff going on. I think last night I did not watch any of the channels for 4 hours. I just watched the ID channel for just really, really stupid stuff that I should not be watching.
So it leaves you paranoid that you're going to die by serial killer instead of losing your rights. I'm not sure if that's like a strategy, right?
My ex-husband used to always be concerned that I watched that channel. I'm not sure why.
It means you know how to commit the crime. It's like you're from Jersey, like me. I've also noticed several people, Drew commented about he dives into LGBTQ movies and documentaries, and somebody else, I saw you put it up on the screen, that Harvey Milk's Give Them Hope speech is just a beautiful speech to think about. You know, we had Stuart Milk a couple of weeks ago talking about that. So there's a lot going on there. So what else do we have in the comments? It's so good today, Henkle.
So I'm not seeing a ton of questions, but a lot of people are sharing sort of what they are doing for their own personal self-care. So I'm going to pull a couple of those up again. So Maggie mentioned that they're having some ice cream sandwiches this afternoon. And we're hearing from people that what else? Sean mentioned that they had planned some self-care around the election, but then it just sort of went out the window. And so getting back to that plan is going to be important. Drew from Seattle mentioned that they've been planted in front of the TV since Tuesday, and that is okay. We have folks that have talked about meditation practice and how it's really important to just remember to breathe.
Cut Jamel's comment.
That just a lot of people that are sharing lots of different ideas about how they are taking care of themselves. Now, one thing I would love to talk about a little bit more, Patrick really related to this sort of feeling guilty about taking the time and feeling guilty for stepping back and saying, I need to take care of myself. Do either of you have things that have worked for you to sort of alleviate that guilt?
No, we're both Catholic. We have a low. We have enough guilt for everyone on this show and everyone watching. I have to tell you, I've never actually gotten rid of my guilt around it. But here's what I know. When I don't do it, I get sick and I break down and then I'm good to nobody. So it's sort of the guilt about not being able to perform drives me to actually take care of myself. And probably it's the wrong motivation, but whatever gets you there is probably right. My brother is binge watching Magnum. He's always binge watching Magnum. But Brian, how have you gotten over your self-care guilt?
It's hard. I feel guilty when I don't, and I feel guilty when I do, right? Again, and I know we're going to run out of time soon. I did, we are getting ready to go into the holidays. And again, hopefully this election will be resolved in another day and a half. And yes, I'm going to say, and what may lift our spirits a little bit would be a pro-equality administration that we can work with. That being said, we then still have the holidays. We still have COVID. We still have 2 months of the fox in the chicken house, if that's the scenario works out. People got to take care of themselves in some way. Nobody is any good to anybody if you don't take care of yourself. Take Angela Davis's advice, and even as hard as it may be, like you may not be able to carve out that hour to work out. But maybe you can carve out. In my case, I have a balcony in my apartment. Going out, well, maybe not now, but going out on the balcony for 30 minutes and just not listening to social media, radio, anything, TV, nothing. But find something that's that you can be disciplined at to get you through this winter, because regardless of what happens this week, it's going to be a long winter. And stay connected. I saw Jamie Curtis post something on that. It's like, whether it is PFLAGers, PFLAG Connects, whether it's your friends, your family, whatever, stay connected right now more than ever. That's part of self-care too. And be good to yourselves. We all need to be good to ourselves right now.
And know that we are super proud of everything that everyone has done. Brian, thank you for coming on today. Look, we made it through without doing anything bad. Liz is going to be
right.
You'll be back, and we'll be back to talk post-election. So
bye, everybody. Stay safe and let them count the votes.
Thank you. And thank you, Jamie.
I'll see you next week.
Well, everybody, that gets us to the end of another show. I am so glad for all of you being here. I have to tell you, I've been reading the comments and it has made me smile so much. You're funny and you're smart and you're brilliant and you're doing good work. So keep up the good work. Keep breathing. Take care of yourself. Remember to run fast, laugh hard, and be kind. And of course, please continue to wear your mask because we need to be safe and we are all going to be together soon. So we are going to be back next week. We have a great show already planned for you. So make sure you mark your calendar. I want to see everybody's names and faces so we can have some more things to talk about. Please visit us at pflag.org to get more information. And until next week, please stay safe. Bye, everybody.